The Leiden University, TU Delft, and Erasmus University Rotterdam collaborated to bring together research on big, open, and linked data that will make our cities work much more efficiently and engage with citizens. In this episode, we would like to introduce the Bold Cities program and the Center for Bold Cities to find out how the program started, why it started, what activities are they presently doing, and where they are headed with this program. Hi everyone, we're back for Season 2, The Bold and the Smart Cities. And we in Urbana's View have collaborated with the Center for Bold Cities. See their mug here? Which is an initiative of the Leiden, Delft, Erasmus Universities to aid researchers in developing and conducting their research on individual citizens and their experience in the smart city. And to learn more about this, we have with us not just one, but three board members of the center, and they are here to have a coffee break with us. So let me go ahead and introduce them. First, we have Kathleen Jonker, who is a full professor of interactive intelligence at the TU Delft. She's a computer scientist, researching and teaching in artificial intelligence. Her publications address cognitive processes and concepts such as negotiation, teamwork, and the dynamics of individual agents and organizations. And I read in her bio that she's also very much interested on dog cognition. Maybe we can talk about that some other time over coffee again, Kathleen. And then we have Bram Plevink, a professor of public administration with a special focus on digitalization and public policy at the Leiden University. His current research includes several projects on the politics and use of big data and algorithms in public governance context. And then finally, of course, not the least, she's Clartje Terhoven, a professor at the Erasmus University. She is the scientific director and coordinator of the interdisciplinary master and research program, Organizational Dynamics in the Digital Society. Her scholarly interests encompass constant connectivity, digital labor, algorithmic management, and workers' well-being. So guys, welcome to Coffee Break with Urbana. Finally! Hello!
Thank you.
Hi.
So maybe let me begin by asking the research agenda of the Center for Bold Cities. What is the research agenda of the Bold Cities Center?
I can start with my interpretation of it. What I gathered from it is that it's really looking at the city and how the city more and more is collecting data of its citizens in different ways to govern the city and its citizens. And this center is really trying to look at, what types of data is actually collected and how does that serve or not its citizens, and which citizens are maybe left out and which aren't, and which processes are maybe more visible because of that and which aren't, and really trying to focus on the citizens while investigating this. So this is my take, maybe you guys have something to add.
So it's more of the interaction between digital data and citizens.
Yeah, so of course also and the government, because the municipalities are mostly the ones collecting these data, and this sheds a certain light on certain processes and certain people. So I think it's really about what types of view does it give us of people living in the city, and how does that serve them or not.
Yeah, it's also about indeed participation in smart cities. How can we empower people to participate? How is technology part of the smart city? What is the role of artificial intelligence, and can that play a beneficial role for everyone? What are the hazards? What can we do to curtail those hazards? And what are the governmental processes to do that? Maybe, Bram, you can say a few more words about that?
Yeah, this all sounds right to me. I say that the focus on data and digitization in the city at least emphasis of the center is very much on the shared values, and shared stands for, I actually have to read it out loud, shared stands for sustainable, harmonious, effective, relevant, empowering, and diverse. So that it shows that we really focus on basically the public and human values in trying to make data and technology work for citizens, for cities, and as Catalijn said, also that participative aspect, right? That it's not just something we do or that government does for citizens, but that it's meant to include the different stakeholders that have a stake in these technologies and in the cities that use these technologies. And of course, my interest there is primarily with what the government does with those technologies and how it affects public servants. But for the center entirely, there's also very much a citizen focus.
Yeah. What's really interesting for me is Catalijn mentioned about the AI, and I'm interested to learn more about the research agenda of Bold Cities in connection to your own research agenda. So we did have a discussion before, me and Catalijn, when we did the interview, that it's more of like how AI can also be used in public services. Can you expound more on that, Catalijn?
Yeah, so one of the things that we, as the board of Bold Cities, try to encourage is research into what we call urban digital twinning, and so the process of using, say, digital copies, you could say, of the city, so digital representations of the city's infrastructure, but also the city's citizens. You could say all organizations that are part of that, what processes play a role to support decision making for within the city. It could be urban planning, but could also help citizens, for example, to find a free parking space in the city. Could also be there to see how we together can, with the neighborhood, for example, develop a certain joint space, so a common space of the city, like parks. How should it look? What should it have to make children feel safe there, feel encouraged to play, and all other inhabitants that would like to use the park? How can we do that in a way that respects those public values that Bram was talking about? And how can we all have a say? It doesn't mean that we all get our wish, of course. We still, everything is supposed to be also democracy. So how do you encourage and how do you support the democratic principles of making decisions within the city?
Using digital data.
Using digital data, using this idea of a digital twin. So with digital twins, you can, for example, run simulations of certain aspects in the city. And what happens if suddenly, I don't know, a big soccer game is in the city? What does that do to the parking spaces? It's always a known problem. Or other events that people would like to organize. How do you do that in a safe way? Can you, for example, look at a digital copy already of the event square, see which angles there are to that, how are the entry roads, how can people safely leave the area in case of an emergency, can ambulances reach the scene, those kind of questions you can simulate in digital copies of the city, and that's called a digital twin. And so it does help us to, as a city, together to form a city that we'd like to live in and that can host interesting events for us.
What's interesting for me is the digital twin that you've mentioned, because it was also mentioned in a discussion that I had with Clarcia earlier on, that the three of you have put together this grant or proposal for funding on digital twins, and these digital twins are going to be specifically in which municipalities are you going to implement this in the event that you successfully get the funding?
Well, we won't implement anything. We will use existing digital twin projects that are already running, and we will try to collaborate with the municipality. So we will start in Rotterdam, I think The Hague, right? And Amsterdam was also one of the first ones, and Utrecht.
Yep.
But also, well, specifically the idea that while doing that and looking at how that was designed, to see if we can make it more open to more stakeholders, and that if we have more overall an idea how to do that, that other cities can use those insights as well. So it's not tied to one municipality, this idea.
Okay, yeah. So Bram, in this, it's called the ELSA Lab, right? Yeah, so this digital twin ELSA Lab grant proposal that you've put together, is this, can you reflect more on it and on what the collaboration it has invited with the municipalities, and can you say that this is a typical Bold Cities process?
Yeah, I think it's a typical Bold Cities process in many ways, right? So it's definitely not just the three of us. It's a much bigger group, originating from the Bold Cities network. So I think in and by itself, the development of the proposal and trying to articulate our different research perspectives and questions in relationship to this overarching theme, specifically for the practical problems that some of these municipalities, or practical issues that some of these municipalities have when it comes to digital twins and digital twinning as a practice. So I think in that sense, the multidisciplinary element, the collaborative element that's in there, the bridging of academic problems with practical issues, I think that's all very much Bold Cities and the way we do research and the way we collaborate. And yeah, but the collaboration, you also asked about the collaboration with these municipalities. As Klaartje mentioned, we take what they already do as a starting point. At the same time, it's also very much an ongoing development that these municipalities, but also others, have high hopes for, but these aren't realized automatically, right? So we see a lot of issues related to representation issues, related to how to take these innovations and incorporate them in existing practices. There are challenges related to the data quality, has effects on neighborhoods, but it also has effects on public servants and how they operate. And we try to incorporate all of that. And I think the clear focus on digital twins and digital twinning, combined with that broad array of perspectives, that is very much what we like to do, if I can speak on behalf of all of us.
Are there still apprehension on the part of politicians or people from the government to do these kinds of projects on digital data management?
Question to me? Well, I think ultimately there are also costs associated with this, right? There are all stuff you can't do, or there are choices to be made, and some of these choices are inherently political, and they already encountered them, and we will come across a couple more, I guess, during the project. At the same time, we found a lot of willingness and also appreciation for the fact that the outcomes of our project will require something of those organizations, right? It's not just an advice or something. It's really working with them, and ultimately that will have to lead to sustained change practices for the organizations. And I think they all also committed to this project and to what that might imply for them. I think that looks good currently.
How about you, Klaartje? Do you think that there's still this, on the part of the citizens, are there still apprehension on the use of this data, or collecting data from public data, do you think that there are still apprehensions from on the part of the citizens in engaging in such activities?
Apprehension means
They don't want to have they don't want to engage in any of these smart technologies, or are there still that kind of
resistance.
resistance or fear of you know
Both.
especially now. I recall in the news that apparently there was a leak on the data that was on the vaccination. Yeah, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think both. So there is resistance and fear, and intertwined. On the use of data for both, understandable and maybe harder to understand reasons, that you don't know what's going to happen with it. So that's of course also, I think, a subject Katelijn knows a lot about. But if it's not really explainable, the AI, that of course is hard then to understand. And I think also rightly so, if you don't know how a certain algorithm came up with a certain conclusion or decision about your life or your neighborhood, or then of course there will be some resistance there.
So there are possibly two dimensions that you agree on as a challenge and a fear. So the AI, the artificial intelligence, possibly the implementation of that, and social polarization. Sorry. What kind of research does the Bold Cities, the Center for Bold Cities, do on these areas, and how does the center work to contribute to the modification of these problems?
And so one of the things that we do is see if we can help people get a voice. So the participation level is that, can we make that easier for them to participate in urban processes, in urban decision making? Can we make them more aware of what happens in terms of digital twinning? And so from artificial intelligence point of view, we're trying to enhance the ways of participation directly. So having artificial intelligence that can understand what people say, what people provide as input, either written or verbally, to the systems. Can we use that to make sure that also say if thousands and thousands of people give their opinion, that we can actually really digest all that information and make sure that we don't just hear the ones that shout loudest, but that we also hear the quiet whispers in the city.
So what do you think are the main challenges of the center, or the main challenges in creating a bold and smart city? Is it the people, is it the technology, or is it economics? Do you have to be financially sufficient to be able to implement such technologies? And what is maybe I'll ask the next question later, because that's too much already.
So for us, I think we see it as really an interdisciplinary problem. We don't say there's one thing that is the main cause, and if we address that, then everything is solved. No, we see that these are complex challenges that are highly interdependent, so economic aspects, but also social aspects, legal aspects, technology aspects, they're all entwined. Rebecca, maybe you want to say more about it?
No, I agree. It's hard to say like one is more prominent than the other, and especially now, I think, well, what's Katelijn already underscored a few times, it's really the attempt to involve as much people and make it a participatory endeavor to include as much stakeholders and citizens as possible. And for that, we also need the technology, and all the different social groups. So I think another important maybe aspect that we didn't touch upon in the proposal is the contestability by design idea that we integrated. So we said, well, normally the social processes and politics within a city are also struggles, right, that are going on about power and resources and who gets hurt and who doesn't, and who's benefited by it and who's not. So how can we maybe also make that part of the technologies we use in the decision-making processes?
I agree, because I think there's difficulty in really understanding data as a public good somehow. So maybe our professor from public administration can explain to us how can we really make how can we really fully understand that the data is a force of public good.
By accepting that it isn't. It isn't just a force of good, right? So it's, some say it's not. It isn't good. It isn't bad, nor is it neutral. It's about how it's used, and what institutions and what safeguards are created, what incentives exist. Also, the economic incentives that you mentioned before. It's about what safeguards and technological developments we can expect on the technology side, on how data are used. A lot of it also has to do with the data themselves, right? How good are they? What quality? What procedures were they collected under? What biases are in there? So, in that sense, as Klaartje said, and as Martijn also emphasized, I think perhaps not the main challenge, but the main task that we are addressing as a center is to really integrate these perspectives, and that just takes time and effort, right? It's easy to say that you do multidisciplinary work and interdisciplinary research, but really understanding how these different elements that you mentioned interface, what they mean for each other, and how you can comprehensively understand them. That is just it's a real effort. It's a nice effort to try to tackle, but it's by no means an easy feat.
Any additional remarks from the group on that?
I agree. It's not an easy task, but it is very rewarding, I would say. So it's really nice to really open it up, try to actually listen to different stakeholders and actually integrate those views in a more inclusive design. So no, it probably, I mean, even if we would get the grant, it still takes a lot of time, and if we don't, we will probably continue doing work on this, but takes maybe then a little bit more time. But I think it's a good cause, and really the direction to go. And it's also not, I think, something that we're the only ones doing that, trying to include all these different stakeholders. So you see it, I think, in lots of different sectors happening now.
I think my personal take, I think, is that the fact that the Center for Bold Cities have created this center primarily to also reach out to different stakeholders and to be able to merge not just TU Delft as a very technical innovative university in terms of engineering, design, and all that science, but we also merge it with policies and the social aspect. I think that's a very strong stand, and also making it, from what I have been reading up, and since I've been working with you with the Center for Bold Cities, that the available information is there in the website, in the center. We do this discussion online, and in even a podcast, to be able to give information to the people that technology is not something to be afraid of. I think that we can use it to our advantage, as well. What do you think about that, Kathleen?
Well, I would strongly support what Bram was just saying, that technology is never value free. So, afraid of or not, it has an effect on our society.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to create together the society that we want to live in.
Correct.
We want to be a part of. And that means that, yes, technology has to be studied also within the scope of that society, and with the help of, in interaction with, all the other sciences that pertain to it. And so you already mentioned social sciences, and the governance and legal aspects, of course, are also there. But also on the individual level, social sciences, right? Also the psychology of it.
Yeah.
We have to understand that no matter what you do with technology, people see opportunities there, and they get enthusiastic. They're grasped. They want to do something with it. And a lot of that will be pretty good, at least the people using it. But there might be side effects, unwanted side effects. And you might have forgotten to look at the interests and values of others when you used it. And put it to use. And the only way that we can find out is if we do it together. So what really drives me for Bold Cities is that we do it together.
Yeah. So, you mentioned about the people being afraid. There's also, I remember a discussion on people being afraid of the presence of AI, artificial intelligence, and they feel that it will affect the labor market. So, what do if they feel that people will be replaced by robots and all that? As an expert, what is your view on this?
Well, my personal view on this is that I don't want to make AI that replaces people. I want to make AI that helps us dream bigger dreams, that empowers us. So it allows us to do those things that we'd like to do, but so far not able to do. Not the AI that makes us lazy, just replaces us and only gives us a load of comfort. But, AI that gives a vibrance to our life, to our existence. Okay, be that as it may, as soon as you start using AI to take some duties, some roles within our society, that means that everything shifts, and that's why it's not value free. Yes, people are right; it will affect how they do their work. Also, as a scientist, I don't do my work in the way I did it 30 years ago. Looking and searching for new research papers has become so much more easy than in the past, and that's all also thanks to AI. Also, my life has changed, even discounting the fact that I am studying AI myself. Also, my life has been affected by it, and I would say most of it for the good. But I think I'm just as annoyed as someone else if some employee somewhere tells me that something that I want done is not possible because the computer says so. This is all I can do with that computer, right? And it doesn't allow me to make it work for me in that sense. That happens all too often to all of us, and that's why, as Clyde was saying, this notion of contestability is really dear to our heart. It should always be possible to say, hey, wait a minute, it can't be a system that rules how we do things here, right?
Correct.
It's there to support us, not to hinder us.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? How do we achieve that? And then, given what Bram already said, the complexity of it, different stakes that people have, we don't agree, all of us, right, as citizens, at what happens in our city. Some are in favor of having the new, say, metro line there, and other is against it because it's way too close to their own homes. And that makes sense too, right? So there are always different interests at stake. We don't always agree. But how can we use artificial intelligence and other technology to make the best compromise of that, or maybe not even the best compromise, the best choices at some point? And yes, that of course will not always be to the satisfaction of everyone.
And I think that's a very good point, because even when you do when I'm already assuming that you'll get the funding. So once you have you forge ahead with the proposal and with the project, what happens in Rotterdam may not be the same as in The Hague. These are, because there are different needs of different people. So we always say this in the development world, there's no one size fits all kind of policy or standard. So it really it's very important to really listen to the stakeholders and what they need in order to implement a good bold cities project. Right? What do you think about that, Bram? I mean, there's no one size fits all. So when you create a policy, it really also depends on the municipality and the capacities of these cities, right?
Yeah, definitely. And but I think what we see, and also what we try to focus on in the project, hopefully it will get funded. I mean, we just leave it up to you if you get funded. We'll wait for
you have to be positive. We're getting it. Law of attraction.
It would definitely deserve getting it. Let's put it like that. But at least that's how we see it. Now, I think in the project, what we focus on are also a lot of pilots, experiments, trying out stuff. And I think what you say is right, that there is no one size fits all, which means that we have to figure out what works on what circumstances, what specific context, what questions, what is acceptable by what group of stakeholders, what are the goals, purposes, what are the associated costs, what are the values involved, how do we trade them off, who trades them off. It's not a question we can answer for every city, for the whole of the Netherlands, for the whole world. You have to figure out what are the varieties, what specific local context, what the history of the product organizations, what local neighborhoods find acceptable, what works in what context, and make sure that the stuff we develop and we find out also has that capacity to be adaptable, I guess, to those local circumstances.
Maybe, if I may add, we can't really, of course, design a one-size-fits-all for content-wise. We can, though, try to develop a method that helps us to include as many, if not all, relevant stakeholders. And I think that's also something that we're trying to do here, that we get really good at how to make sure that everybody is involved in this specific issue, gets a say. So although every issue is different and every city is different, there might be a method of how to do this right.
Yeah, a guideline.
Yeah.
So that's
what we hope is that our procedures, the way of working, as I say, research methodology and a design methodology, will be transferable to other cities. And that methodology is not just the design of the twin itself, but also the process towards establishing whether or not we're going to have a digital twin in the first place. But also who participates in its design.
Correct.
And how the contestation is part of that design, and how the whole urban digital twin is embedded within the procedures of the municipality to make its decisions, so that also contestability after the fact is still possible and really entrenched in the procedures of the city. That the way that the companies that are part of the digital twinning process are the ones that build some of it, can participate in the procurement of the product, is part of a design in which contestability and social values, public values, are taken along. And maybe you can say a bit more about that, Bram. You understand more about these things than I do.
I know this is very well put.
Yeah.
I agree.
I really hope that you get the project, because
You do too.
because the idea of Clarkson like coming up with that kind of guideline will also not. We're not just talking about the global north. We're not just talking about the Netherlands. So having sort of like a guideline like that can also help other countries and other cities, and I think, I don't know if it's the same wish that you have, but I really wish that the Bold City Center will also expand to the global south, so we can touch upon the other countries, because there's always this thinking that smart cities and technologies are only for the first world, high income countries, in Europe, and in Asia it's just Singapore, Korea, and Japan. So I think it's really good if we can have. I really hope and wish that you get the funding for it.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm also happy to say that our consortium and the Bold Cities network has many international contacts, and within those also reaches out to and has contacts to many of the cities all over the world. So yes, we are definitely planning on also reaching out with our ideas and our results to those international partners that we have.
Okay, so with that, I think it is a very good introduction to the Center for Bold Cities. This episode is really entirely for introducing the board members, the new board members, and the Center for Bold Cities. And I want to ask each one of you as a parting message, any parting message to the audience, especially to the youth, to the young people out there, to encourage them and to talk to them about bold cities and smart cities. Can we start with Bram now?
Message you give to the youth about our center.
Everyone, to the audience, maybe the young people out there, to all the stakeholders that you have in mind, in fact.
Yeah, so the general message will be try to get involved, right? So we're trying to set this up, and not just us, but to make sure that voices are heard. But as Katrijn mentioned before, there's so many different perspectives, and even within ourselves, right? So I can be in competition with myself when it comes to certain technologies as a researcher. I might have different opinions, and as a parent, as a pedestrian, different from what I have as a car driver. So there are many different perspectives I have. So it's also figuring out what you think about specific technologies or specific uses thereof is something we all have to do. And there's a lot of nuance that has to be in that. There's a lot of, as you said before, there's no one size fits all. There's also no one right answer, right? I think figuring out for ourselves how we feel about it and trying to make that heard and making use of any contestability practices, we will triumph. Is something that all of us can do.
Clarche?
Well, maybe I can add to that, because I feel really getting involved in all aspects of life, more broadly or actively, is really hard right now because lots of things are happening. And but I think maybe my message would be pick one. So like a technology or a process, or so if you feel like, for example, it's unfair that your data is used in certain ways you do not have control over, then pick that and make sure you have a voice in that. But if you feel like climate change is something you want to really focus on, pick that and go for it. But just to not get bitter, I think it's good to have something to focus on, and that put your energy in that.
Wow.
And
You want me to add
focus your energy on one
specific
thing,
social
on a
issue
specific thing.
that you want to get involved in, to let your voice be heard in that specific issue.
Yeah, and I think in the Netherlands we have the democracy to really live to the dream, to have the city as being the exponent of the citizens. So as citizens, all of us, all stakeholders, we together are the city, we together make the city, and we together decide on the future of the city. So I think if I listen to Bram and Clartin and I say, it's also an attitude, make it your own, be there, join us, do it together, and that's fun.
Thank you so much. So what I'm gathering from you is that very good messages on people should be involved. People should be able to focus on their energy, on what they're passionate about, I think, and work together. That's what I am gathering from all of you. So on that note, thank you so much for working together, for being involved, and for being passionate about the Bold Cities and the Center for Bold Cities. Thank you so much, Clarche, Kathleen, and Bram, for being with us and having a coffee break. Can I see your coffee cups right now? Thank you for having a coffee break with us, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.